Greetings, fellow Knucklers. How are you gents doing this evening?
Fantastic.
Doing great, man. How are you?
Doing great. Great to see you. Excited for episode 2 of season 2. But before we dive into this, I have a very important announcement to make. We are 50 days away from the start of the NFL season. Some rookies have already started reporting to camp. Quarterbacks who are looking to take the next step in their careers are hosting private, offensive training sessions in the Bahamas, Texas, Montana. This time next week, training camp officially begins, and I declare that it is okay to start doing mock drafts. It's okay to start doing them. It's not too early. Talk about it with your friends. I'm probably going to set my over-under probably about 150 mock drafts this year, and I still think I'm going to pound the over on that. How many mock drafts you got in you this year, Tony?
Total right now, 0. In the future, minimum 100.
Minimum 100. D, what about you, buddy?
I do quite a bit, 2 to 3 weeks out to the draft. I'd say there's a lot to gain from mock drafts. It's tough to get real mock drafts, as you'll find people like we have in our league that draft stupidly or reach too high for players. But like many things, the more practice you get, the more prepared you are for the real thing.
And Dietrich, you're like me. You're sitting there on the toilet. You get a quick little mock in, and then you send it to me. It happens at least 5 times a year. You'll be like, "Hey, man, I just busted out this mock draft on the John. What do you think?"
Yep.
Happens.
Yeah, I know you go this route too. You get the simulated mock drafts on Fantasy Pros. I love the platform because you get to plug in the keepers. It also has the settings allowing you to add in your buddies' tendencies. The mock is done in minutes. That's generally all I do in preparation for the draft.
Absolutely. And Tony, you're in a weird position. We kind of spoke about it last episode. Very little draft capital in the early rounds for you. Do you think you're going to have to draft more to prepare, or are you just going to say, I'm just going to mail it in this year and give minimum effort in the offseason?
No, I definitely will have to draft more and try to find those jewels at the end of the draft and see what falls to me. So, yeah, be more prepared.
And as Dietrich mentioned, we are very fortunate to have a few people who do 0 mock drafts, so that you should get some people who fall to you, like always. But D, what do we got in news? That's what's been happening in the NFL.
Sure, let's jump into it. So last Friday, July 15th, was the franchise tag contract extension deadline. Some players to note that were seeking long-term extensions. Dalton Schultz, tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. He did sign his 1-year franchise tender at $10.9 million, but he was openly frustrated with the lack of progress in the long-term deal. This leads you to believe that Schultz will be a free agent next season. Also, and speaking of tight ends, Mike Gesicki of the Dolphins signed his 1-year franchise also at that $10.9 million rate. He's going to be a free agent as well. Gesicki's interesting because he's more of a big-bodied wideout. He ran the 4th most pass routes among tight ends last season, over 70 catches, totaling 800 yards in Miami. Guys, this is turning into a pretty good free agency class next year for tight ends. Some notable tight ends on the list will also include Robert Tonyan, Austin Hooper, and Dawson Knox. Any of you boys, looking at those, thinking they might be great additions to your team?
Yeah, Gesicki, honestly, glad he signed there. Gonna love to get some Miami stock this year. So, hey, glad to see him there, but it'd be crazy to see him leave. I think he's a very talented tight end. Was he going into his 3rd year? So very young.
3rd, 4th, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gesicki's an interesting one. He's had a few head coaches in his short career, multiple quarterbacks, but do like him. I think I made a mistake last episode and said he was already signed for way higher than he initially signed. I guess, he probably wishes I was his agent. But 2 of the tight ends, Dietrich, that you noted right there, I'm huge on Big Bob Tonyan on a comeback season, especially, Rodgers and him have a, chemistry going, and I expect him to have a big bounce back year. I had Dawson Knox last year. He definitely helped me avoid our Sacco. He had a couple of games where he had 3 touchdowns in a game and 24 points at a tight end slot. You'll eat that up every time.
Yeah, these guys are performers. I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to get some decent deals next year on different teams. They were trying to get the long-term deal, and I don't blame them. Some notable guys that were tagged that got those extension deals done. Chris Godwin, 3 years, $60 million with Tampa, likely to open the season on the pup, however, because he tore his ACL week 15 last season. We also have David Njoku talking about tight ends. 4-year, $56.75 million with the Browns. That's a hefty price tag for Njoku. And then, of course, Davante Adams traded to the Raiders and gets that signed 5-year deal, $140 million.
Yeah, big money for Davante.
I'm going to be missing him quite a bit, but look out for the rookie breakout Christian Watson. We'll get to him in maybe next week's episode when we highlight some rookies.
Yeah, Njoku's so interesting though, because like last year, he was the year prior, like he had like no future in Cleveland, right? Like they got Austin Hooper, like he was like the odd man out, and I think he just had a couple of games down the stretch last season to kind of propel him to get this contract. So good for him. Way to stay after it. Yeah, and obviously talking about Davante, Justin Jefferson was in the news praising Davante, saying that he was the number one wide receiver right now. But then Justin Jefferson's going to overtake that this year. Guys, like there are so many great wide receivers, and like you said, we'll get to that next week when we do our wide receiver rankings. But does Justin Jefferson have a shot to be the number one wide receiver heading into 2023?
I mean, I think he's continued to perform. Kirk Cousins isn't garbage. And, I think Justin Jefferson is probably in a better position than Davante Adams to excel. So I don't think he's smoking too much here. But I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on it. What about you, D?
Well, spoiler alert a little bit here for next week, but he's my pick to finish as the overall number one wide receiver this season. I'm a big fan of Justin Jefferson. I know Chris is going to appreciate hearing that because he's going to have him as a keeper this year for our league. But Justin Jefferson's a stud. He saw a 30% target share last season. Vikings should throw more this season with Kevin O'Connell replacing Mike Zimmer as the head coach. He's proven to be a top talent at the position within the NFL. But you got to have a few seasons at the top to surpass Adams.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, he's had his rookie year and last year was unbelievable. I think he's on pace to obviously have a great career. But I'll leave us some Moose Knuckle news as well for you folks out there. Please remember to pay your league dues by the end of this week to Mr. Tony here. It's that way you guys can be eligible to pick your driver for the NASCAR race, which determines our draft order because we are huge NASCAR fans in the NFL. Dietrich, any other news to wrap up this wonderful segment?
Yeah, I got one more for you. Let's talk about our good friend Leonard Fournette, friend of the podcast, Leonard Fournette. Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times reported that Bucs coaching staff was, quote, not happy, unquote, when Leonard Fournette skipped OTAs and then showed up to mandatory minicamp weighing close to 260 pounds, roughly 30 pounds gained this offseason, which isn't the right direction to be going when you were just given a 3-year deal. He's also been reported with a mild case of stone hands in camp, dropping a few passes in his first minicamp sessions. Gentlemen, Leonard Fournette's ADP is around number 24 right now. So does this offseason news give you any sort of concern? Do you start looking at the depth chart as rookie Rachaad White was a 3rd-round pick out of Arizona State? Possibly stash-worthy based on the news, huh?
I'm so mad that you said Rachaad White's name because even before that fat ass showed up to camp, I was kind of targeting Rachaad White. I thought he was going to be great there. Leonard Fournette has had his years, but I think he's a much better talent than the vacated Ronald Jones. So, damn you for coming in fat.
Listen, this is typical Leonard Fournette. Like he's had his issues in Jacksonville. He's obviously has won a Super Bowl and is now playoff Lenny. I wouldn't draft him for fantasy, but if I was a Bucs fan, like, hey, as long as you are healthy by the playoffs and you turn into playoff Lenny, that's all I care about. So, fantasy-wise, I'd be very concerned. This has got Eddie Lacy all over it, Dietrich.
Yeah, Cheeseburger Eddie references aplenty right now. But Playoff Lenny did turn into Lombardi Lenny, so maybe he can turn it around, burn off some calories here in camp, and get back to his playing weight, so to speak.
Absolutely. And then one last bit of news. Fantasy football trailblazer, I guess we can call him the GOAT. I'm not the biggest fan of this guy. I think he's very arrogant, and there's no arrogance in fantasy football. But, he did announce he is leaving ESPN. He has yet to announce on where he is going, which kind of leaves it up in the air. He's definitely going to be involved in the fantasy world. I think he's going to go to the new Sleeper app that we tried a couple of years ago. I think that was a rumor, but are you guys hearing anything on where good old Mr. Matthew Berry is?
You guys find it interesting that the week we start up our YouTube channel and broadcast the first episode of the 2022 season is the day he pens his resignation to ESPN. But no, in all seriousness, if you speak towards the business side of fantasy football, Matthew Berry is the face of it. He propelled coverage and podcasting to what it is today. Tony, I know you were a giant fan of his podcasting content, as was I. Much of this, these three imbeciles behind a microphone right now and other podcasters much more successful than us wouldn't exist at the level it is today without Matthew Berry paving the way. So if I may say, he put asses in the seats. Mainstream coverage of fantasy is what it is because of his 15-plus year body of work at ESPN. I did see that Peter King came out in his Monday Football Morning in America blog that he writes that he expected Berry to join NBC and be a lead on Football Night in America, doing fantasy analysis and odd-making coverage over there. I think he still is a part owner of the Fantasy Life app, too, that he kind of co-launched with a few folks. So something that's been maybe small to grow, but could become more prominent given he has more attention to offer it.
Yeah, definitely a trailblazer, someone that has really kept me focused in my start in fantasy football. And sad to see him go, but maybe in a different realm. If I had to guess, he might be going to Saudi Arabia as well and join the live coverage. But just my guess.
He's going to the live, huh?
Yeah.
I think that's a hell of a guess, man. God, that's awesome. But like I said, Trailblazer, every single Thursday I think he'd come out with his rankings on Wednesday, and then on Thursday he would do his love-hate article on ESPN. And easily for the last 7 years, however long he's been doing it, I read that article every single Thursday after I bash him. But what I would always do, and like everyone did, they would skip the novel that he wrote in the beginning of that love-hate article. It talked about his time at Marvel or when he was on, doing the movies or whatever. It's like I skipped that every single time. Just give me the meat and potatoes, Barry. So, but very jealous. The guy is the GOAT, and best of luck to wherever he goes.
Yeah, man. I think it came out what Schefter gets paid about $10 million a year. So only telling what salary Matthew Berry can pick up going to the Kings like NBC and covering the night football coverage.
Schefter's making 10 a year. Holy cow.
One other piece of news, I saw you threw this in the doc. I think it was you, Chris, but the 49ers have granted Jimmy G to seek a trade. Guys, where do you think he ends up? I can go first. I think Houston feels like the most likely option for me. Probably the last place he wants to go, but probably a good chance to head there. The Texans aren't planning to win this coming season, but one thing they have is draft picks. And after that Watson trade, they got a ton of them, and they got cap space on top of that. So is the future Davis Mills, or you bring Jimmy in and turn it into a competition? But that's how I see it. What do you guys think?
God, Houston's a great pick, but I think they're going to ride the David Mills train. I think he performed okay last year. Lovie Smith is, head coach. But like you said, they have no expectation to win. They're going to be a top 3 pick lock next year. Seattle would make the most sense if it wasn't in the same division. Browns have the cap space, depending on what Watson's is. Tony, I have no clue, so I'm just going to defer to you on this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think Seattle is a good spot, but if he moves, I don't think it's going to be before the season. I think it'll come down to maybe a big name going down. They need to compete now, and then moving in season. I think that's the only way he moves.
Yeah, and they're buying into Trey Lance, huh? I guess they're all aboard Trey Lance to start the season, which I guess leads us into our quarterback rankings, guys.
Ooh.
Tony, why don't you take this one over, brother?
Absolutely. So, wanted to break down our top 15 quarterback rankings for our audience here today. What we did is we went ahead and put them in a consensus ranking. Everyone ranked their own quarterbacks 1 through 15, so then averaged that out. And the top of our list today is Josh Allen at number 1. So Matt and Tony had him at 1, while Chris had him at 2.
Why do you hate Josh Allen?
Yeah,
Chris?
why are you shading so hard?
You know what, man? I love Josh Allen. It's just he had a phenomenal year last year, and I'm just very high on a certain guy who I think is probably coming up shortly. So, Tony, keep going on the list, man.
Yeah, not a lot to say on my end there. I think it's 1A, 1B here between this next guy. Dun, 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 dun. Justin Herbert. Agreed. Phenomenal year. He's going to have another great year as well. So Chris had him at the 1 spot, and Tony and Matt had him at the 2 spot.
I'm just so high on the Chargers this year. Like, I will probably place a pretty good bet for them to win the AFC West. Like, Denver's improved dramatically. I think Kansas City has, gone down a little bit by losing Tyreek Hill. And, man, you add some really great defensive players in Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson, and I think they have the best team on paper to make a run at the Super Bowl. So, yeah, for that to happen, Justin Herbert's got to be the best quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to mention bolstering that depth behind Austin Eckler with the draft pick of Isaiah Spiller. I think they're just a very well-rounded team. Keenan Allen is just Mr. Steady Eddie in terms of fantasy production. Always a good name at the top of everybody's draft. He never disappoints. Mike Williams, I mean, shoot, Tony, you got some nice production out of him last season. I think the arrow is still trending up. Even Gerald Everett at the tight end position, sneaky tight end there that can get you points week to week. It's hard to find flaws in this team, and Justin Herbert is going to be a huge beneficiary of it. He's going to be top 2. Yeah, let's lock it in.
All right, guys. Here's where it gets interesting. All right, heading into the third one, we have Patrick Mahomes. Now, it might not seem interesting to Chris and Matt, who have ranked him 3rd on their list, right? But Tony has Patrick as his 6th quarterback on his list. Oh, yes.
Okay.
And why is that? Well, I think he's going to be missing a certain someone this year, maybe by the name of Tyreek Hill. And let's just look at his production last year. 1,200 yards vacated. That's a lot. And if we compare Patrick Mahomes to maybe someone that might be even further down the list that is a star quarterback who also lost a star on their team, I think we'll talk about him later. That's a lot of production to just pull out and then not see him kind of fall down the ranks. So that's why I have him falling down so far. How about you guys?
So you don't think Juju Smith-Schuster or Marquez Valdez-Scantling could fill 20 or 1,200 yards?
Certainly, I'm not taking Patty down 1,200 yards. Let's see. I took him down. Let's see. Only 400 yards, but I took him down 5 touchdowns. He went from 37 to 32. I just don't see him getting that production. Yeah. And that's
Tyreek's a big loss.
Doesn't take a lot to knock him down a couple spots. Yeah.
No doubt Tyreek's one of those guys that can take the top off, a defense. So it's losing him vacates a lot of targets, like you said. But I think the addition of Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be interesting, and I think it's going to be of value in a lot of these drafts. I think his ADP is climbing up a little as we inch closer to the season, but I like him a lot more than the stock of Marquez Valdez-Scantling. seen plenty of him in Packers. He's had a great quarterback throwing him the ball the past couple of years, and just never reached that top tier wide receiver that many believed he would become. But I think Juju, he's still only 25. I think he's got what it takes, and getting behind somebody like Mahomes throwing the ball, I think a lot of good production can come from it. I don't think we're going to see. I still think we're 1 or 2 years removed from the Travis Kelce dip, so I think you're going to get enough production out of that. So I think Mahomes stays in the top 3 for me.
Makes sense. All right, moving on to number 4. We have Lamar Jackson. Chris, you have him at 4, right where he landed. Matt, you had him at 6, fading him a little bit, and I'm a little bit higher on him at the 3 spot. So let's see. I guess I can go first and just say, hey, Lamar Jackson, I'm high on him. He missed a lot of games last year. I don't like to rank into the season saying, hey, you're going to miss games, right? I want to start out and kind of rank my quarterbacks as, hey, you're going to play the entire season. And if Lamar had played, I think he could have been the 3rd quarterback in the league this year. So I'll open the floor to Chris and Matt on that one.
Tony, 100% agree. I think if Lamar Jackson stayed healthy for you, maybe you would have won it instead of Ryan. So maybe. But he also lost Marquise Hollywood Brown to Arizona. We've talked about that last week. He's going to get a new contract probably before the season starts to pay the man. The guy just wins in Baltimore when he's on the field. And for them to win, he's going to need to rush for 1,000 yards. And I think he can do that. And I think he was on pace for that last year. So if he rushes for 1,000 yards, plays the games, that's going to give you some really good fantasy value. And if he rushes for 1,000 yards, I would put him over Mahomes as well. Like I would put him at 3.
Yeah, you guys hit the high notes here. Make no mistake, Jackson is a top-tier NFL quarterback, but the risk of injury due to his style of play put him down at 6 for me because I'm factoring in that there's some missed games in there. He missed the final 4 games of the 21 season due to an ankle injury, and you'd like to see the passing game continue to evolve for Baltimore, but they don't have a very strong wide receiver room. Behind Bateman, there isn't much to hang your hat on for fantasy. So you'll have to bet on Jackson making plays with his legs, which he'll do for you when he's healthy on the field.
Very nice. Well, we move from one running quarterback on to the next. Let's see. At the 5 spot, we have Jalen Hurts. So, Chris, you were fading this running quarterback a little bit at the 8 spot. Matt, you were right on at 5, and I was a little bit higher than Jalen with 4. So we'll start at the bottom here. Why are you fading him, Chris?
I just don't like it. Like I think they would be just as good if they had our boy Gardner Minshew, friend of the show. Like I really think that offense would roll better. He is a quarterback. Jalen Hurts is still trying to learn how to. He's like still in like the baby phase of the NFL. Like kind of like, hey, I'm going to use my legs first instead of throw the ball, and that leads to more injuries. We talked about it. So I know he's got new weapons, but I just like my other 3 people I have ahead of him. Instead, I don't like. I just don't like him as much as the other 3 people, I guess. So he got the short end of the stick for me. I know. So Dietrich, go ahead.
Well, hey, if any of you listened to this podcast last season, you would know that I was pretty critical of Hurts and his performance. I often referred to him as the garbage man, king of garbage points. But I like the playmakers at receiver, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. Quez Watkins is sort of interesting as an end-of-draft flyer, too. I think the pass game improves. His ball security needs to improve with it. But I have him up at number 5. I think his mobility is up there with the best of them. Give him more designed runs. Will he be an elite NFL quarterback? I'm not so sure, but will he be good for fantasy? No doubt about it.
Yeah, and only playing 15 games last year. I think he's going to come out and with, like you said, all those additional pieces, give him some more tutties year over year and probably some more running yards. All right, so moving on to our number 6, we have Joe Burrow. All right, Chris, you came in right at 6 on Joe. Matt, you're fading him a little bit at 7, and I'm just a little bit higher on him 5. So we're pretty in the ballpark on Joe Burrow here. Matt, haven't started with you, so you're fading him a little bit, but certainly not too far.
Yeah, I wanted to slot Burrow higher in my ranks. I've really tried to. The offense is loaded from top to bottom. The pass volume is trending up. The investment in the offensive line is what previously, held back Burrow, maybe, in my opinion, sacked like 70 frickin' times. That's being addressed. So, yeah, I'm in. Possibly more run play opportunity as he's getting further away from that gruesome injury he suffered. He was PFF's highest graded passer in the regular season last year. I wouldn't be surprised if he has the highest completion percentage this season.
Yeah, something like 70% completion percentage. I think he was the only one this year to tap 70%. Amazing. You give him a nice line to sit behind. I mean, who's going to stop him? Absolutely.
He's Joe Cool, baby. I think he can throw for 40 touchdowns this year. I really do. He has the offensive weapons to do so. He just has to stay healthy. The offensive line's got to play, but if that all happens, he can throw 40 touchdowns. If he does that, he's way ahead of where we had him. So we may be even selling Joe Burrow short here, but I do like where we have him. He's a stud.
Yeah, talk about selling some people short. At 7, we have Kyler Murray. Chris, you have him at 5. Matt, very high on him at 4, and I'm fading him a bit at 10. So I'm much lower than you guys. Matt, let's go ahead and hear yours and why you're so high on him.
I don't know why you guys are hating him. It's the other. I'm gonna flip the script here and put it back on you guys because I think you're going to tell me, the loss of Hopkins in the first half of the year. I think the loss of Hopkins potentially elevates his points per game. That Kyler run option package may be more plentiful in these weeks. I don't hesitate to take Murray in drafts. Confidence that with the additions of Hollywood and Trey McBride are complementary adds for Kyler's game. This is a tough division. He's going to have to put up points to stick with them, and that equals to fantasy production. So I'm in on Kyler Murray.
Chris, anything to add?
Kyler Murray won it. Yeah, he won it for me in 2020. I love the kid. Dietrich hit it on the nose. Without Hopkins, hopefully he's got to run a little more than we just better yards for us. And he's reunited with his boy, Marquise Hollywood Brown, who he's always wanted to play with. So I like it. I think he could be as high as 3. But, he's special to me. He won me my first championship. So I got a soft spot for Kyler.
I root for him. I really do. I like to see the guy play. And he did miss 3 games last year. And maybe I didn't. I actually like where my stats are on him. He was one of the most fumble heavy quarterbacks, especially of the runners. I think he was at 13-14 last year. It's a lot of balls he gave up. And that could be an outlier too, but he does move with the ball. And add that with DeAndre Hopkins being out for several weeks, he's going to struggle. And so, yeah, it was hard. Maybe I'm a little too low on him, but I see him struggling out the gate, unfortunately. What was his schedule strength? Do you guys know that offhand?
We check Fantasy Pros real quick.
I think it was on the moderately harder side.
It was.
He is on the harder side. Fantasy Pros has him at 2 out of 5 stars. 2 being you're screwed for the upcoming season.
Yeah. All right, moving on to our 8th pick, and it is Mr. Unlimited Russell Wilson. Chris, you had him at 7, Matt at 8, and I had him at 11. So I'm fading him a little bit more than you guys. I think Russ, he can cook, but it's his first year in Denver, right? So he's got to get acclimated there. So I'm not as confident in him coming out and calling him a top 10 quarterback this year, but he's got the talent around him. I think there's some rumbles in the bushes, as you might say, about Jerry Jeudy and his status this year. We'll see what comes about that. as well. Didn't really factor too much of that into my ranking, but that's kind of what I'm concerned with. What about you guys?
Yeah, I like him. I think, once a quarterback goes to Denver, they kind of just rejuvenate their career. And, he's got a offensive minded head coach now, who was a offensive coordinator for Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett. So I like that. And you're also giving Russell Wilson something that he hasn't had in Seattle since Marshawn Lynch. And you're giving him not one, but two very solid running backs. And if he doesn't, he's going to see schemes where he may have 8 men in the box, which is just going to open it up and he's going to gain another 5 to 7, maybe even 10 yards on the deep ball. But playing 8 games in Denver, I like it. He can still play. I think this is going to really excite him to be competitive in that strong AFC West. So, he's got to be competitive for them to stay for them to compete in that division. I think it's going to happen. So, yeah, I'm very high on Russell.
Yeah, Chris, you took all my points. I'm really excited to see him in this Nathaniel Hackett system. He's got a great supporting cast around him. Javonte, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler. I mean, I'm excited to see who comes out as the number one wideout out of that group, because I think there's a lot of speculation of who's going to become that elite wide receiver for Denver. Unfortunately, we have a diehard Bronco fan in our league, and he'll probably draft Russell Wilson too high. But I would love to walk away with Wilson in my draft.
Absolutely. And DJ, I think, it could be an environment like it was in Seattle where it's like, hey, 1 week, Lockett's going to be the guy. The next week, it's going to be Metcalf. It could be 1A, 1B very easily in Denver, which would bode very well for Broncos fans.
Very possible.
All right. Moving on to the 9th spot, we have Dak Prescott. Chris, you had him at 11. Matt, right on the nose at 9, and myself at 8. Matt, you want to lead this one since you nailed the target?
I mean, I still have an affinity for Dak. I took him last year. I thought he was a serviceable quarterback. He had his ups and downs, but when he hits, man, he delivers you that 40-point game. And I think the offense still has enough to put you over that, to get you in that average points per game. I think Dak just comes with a nice floor. I think he's a hyper talented quarterback. I don't have a lot of cons for him. I think he can get, you walk away with Dak Prescott as your starting quarterback in virtually any fantasy league, and you're doing all right for yourself.
I could talk a little bit about why I'm high on him. I pretty much stat-wise, I had him flat year over year. So you could say I was down on him because he only he missed, 1 game. And I said, hey, maybe he's a little bit more comfortable running this year, on his second year on that leg. And maybe he controls the ball a little bit more, only 8 fumbles. So it was really a flat year over year, and he just kind of fell to that spot for me. So how about you, Chris?
Yeah, he's at 11 for me. No Amari Cooper, Gallup coming back from the injury, but I'm high on Gallup. CeeDee Lamb is, I think, maybe one of the most overrated wide receivers in the league. I think he's got to show me more than he has his first 2 years. He was drafted, right where Justin Jefferson was a couple years ago. I think he needs to step up. Dalton Schultz seems pissed off because he doesn't have a new contract. He's playing on the franchise tag, which we talked about. And Zeke is going to take another step back, and Tony Pollard is going to take over in Dallas as the starting running back. So
Wow.
Dak is, that's a lot, right? But Dak is great. Dak is great, but I just don't think the Cowboys are going to – easy division. They'll probably win it, but, he's going to be just Dak.
Yeah. If anyone's going to lose it for him, it's Mike McCarthy, right?
Yeah, as much as I'd like to see them open up those run plays for Dak, because I think he's very capable at that. That's not Mike McCarthy's scheme. He just wants to bomb it out. And who might be the sneaky beneficiary from all that is rookie Jalen Tolbert. I think keep him on your radar. Put him on stash him. Hopefully he doesn't get too much draft hype. I hope we're not elevating his ADP right now as we speak about him, but I think that might be a nice stash for most leagues.
I think he'll be great next year when Sean Payton takes over for the Dallas Cowboys and comes back to coach, and Dak goes on to have a Hall of Fame career and the Cowboys win 2 championships, but not this year.
All right, guys, let's round out our top 10 here with Tom Brady. Chris, you had him at 9. Matt, you had him at 11, and I had him at 9. So I think let's roll with you, Chris. Why were you so high on him?
He's because you can't bet against him. Like that's the only reason. Like he's got Mike Evans still. Mike Evans is a top 10 wideout. He's going to have Chris Godwin back. He's got Russell Gage, who if Russell Gage can play as a great number 2 while Chris Godwin's out. I'm not going to be the guy who bets against Tom Brady on this show. So I'll pass it to you guys.
Yeah, I had him at the same spot as you, and I mean, putting him at the 9 is taking him down from what was he like top 3 on the year last year? Like,
we're dissing him enough.
Yeah,
like
it's an ugly position to be in, but I'm going to have to take the side of thinking that the wheels are going to fall off eventually for Tom Brady, and I'm thinking that it's going to be. I think this is going to be his last dance, so to speak. And you got you're losing Chris Godwin. He's going to start the season on the pup, and then you got Eddie Lacy 2.0 in the backfield now. Leonard Fournette. That's he's going to be the running back. I don't know. I don't know if the supporting. I agree with you, Chris. I'm a huge Russell Gage fan. I think he's going to do well on that offense, but. You also have Todd Bowles now calling the shots for coaching, with Bruce Arians kind of taking a step back. So Todd Bowles has always been a defensive-minded coach. I think that might affect the play calling. We'll see what comes of it for Tom Brady.
Awesome. All right, here's one I was definitely surprised at quarterback, Super Bowl quarterback Matthew Stafford. Super Bowl winning quarterback Matthew Stafford. Chris, you had him at 10. Matt, you had him at 13. And I had him at 7. I love Matty. I mean, I think he's a great quarterback. He's got Cooper Kupp. I mean, that guy won some accolades this year, right? He's still there. I know he lost to OBJ, right? They didn't re-sign him. He's still a free agent, I think. But he wasn't there all year. What's to say that they can't do that again? Cam Akers came in late in the season. I've said enough. Chris or Matt, you want to take it from the 10 or 13th spot?
So Matt Stafford, for me, he's a tremendous quarterback, obviously. Super Bowl winning QB. I think the offense has changed enough where it leaves me some concern. And actually, Matt Stafford tied for the most interceptions last year with your boy, Trevor Lawrence, Chris. So it's just something that I'm taking a little bit of a step back and reassessing Stafford. At the start of the year, he might float a little higher in the ranks. I feel like I might have him a little too low right now, but that's where I got him today, and I'm uncertain of what this Rams offense looks like going into the season.
Tony, where did he finish on the season for quarterbacks? Do you have that in front of you?
3rd, right?
So he was 3rd?
I think
so. We're all kind of dropping him. We're all dropping him, right? We're all dropping him because there's no way Cooper Kupp, who just won like NFL Best Player of the Year in the ESPYs. Congratulations, Cooper. But there's no way he's going to replicate the season he had last year. They lost Robert Woods, replaced him with Allen Robinson, which I think is an upgrade, which is great. But I think Cooper Kupp just had such an extraordinary year, and he's not going to be able to replicate that, which is why I think Stafford drops right at my 10. So still has a great year, but I mean, Cooper Kupp helped propel his fantasy year last year.
Sounds like I'll be scooping him up for a nice value this year. Speaking of values, at the 12th spot, we have Aaron Rodgers. Chris, you nailed it at the 12. Matt, you nailed it at the 12. And I was just a little bit lower on him as a Bears fan at 13. So, I mean, who wants to talk about Aaron Rodgers first?
Let's give it to the Packer fan. We'll get it out of the way.
You're talking about the 2-time NFL MVP, Aaron Rodgers. He's excellent. And just unfortunately, it's an uncertain wide receiver core in Green Bay right now. So he probably finishes higher than we all have him ranked. but there's just uncertainty that comes with this year, and that's kind of why he floats towards the back of the pack for me. Somebody's got to step up in that wide receiver room. It's unclear as to who that's going to be. Vacated a lot of targets with the departure of Devontae Adams, so that's why I have him there painfully. But let me hear your guys' thoughts.
Yeah, the amount of vacated yardage and even touchdowns with Devontae Adams gone is a huge hole, as well as Valdez Scantley. You have two Lazards there now, the Lizard King and Alan Lazard, and it's a different team, really, with those pieces gone.
But hey, have no fear. They actually worked out wide receiver John Brown today. So we'll see if that's a late addition to the squad.
Wow. Odell Beckham Jr., Julio still out there and still unsigned by the Packers. They're working out John Brown. Yeah, I think even for Rodgers, two-time MVP Rodgers and hell of a golfer, I might add, Aaron Rodgers, for him even to get to 12 for me, Big Bob Tanyan's got to catch at least 12 touchdowns. Like, that's how it's going to happen because, like, I just think that for Aaron to have the great year that he needs to have, he's got to rely on Big Bob Tanyan. And I think 12 is a stretch. I didn't want you guys to, not respect me as a fantasy guy by, slipping him below 12. So I kept him in there, but I think he can.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't know what to do with. We'll have to see. Yeah. Did they run more?
I think he could be.
I think Aaron Jones is a huge beneficiary in this offense this season. I think he's going to be catching a lot of balls in the backfield. I think you're getting a huge value for him because he's going like late second round, early third round value right now in sleeper drafts. Scoop him up all day, all night at that value.
Agreed.
All right, guys, let's move on to number 13. We got Trey Lance. Could be considered the first rookie, although it is his second year. He just didn't start for San Fran last year. Chris, you had him at 14. Matt at 10, a little higher than you and I. I also had him at 14. I'll go ahead and start. I was not very excited, pleased. I didn't like what I saw. That it didn't pass the eyeball test for me last year. So he has a lot to prove. I think I'm giving him a gimme here at 14 myself because San Francisco is a good team, good offensive team. I think he'll probably fit the scheme pretty well. Think of almost like a Jalen Hurts type of role where, run it or dish it out. But he's got to prove it first before giving them Jalen Hurts fourth spot numbers.
For sure. Yeah, he did not do enough for me last year, and the little that he played. Debo has no interest in playing for the 49ers this year. Doesn't mean he's not going to be traded or not. But if Debo gets traded, I don't think there's a chance that Trey Lance sniffs top 14. And I know, like, you guys can make fun of me and everything like that, but George Kittle misses a few games a year as well, and I just don't think he'd have the solid pieces to get him into a top 14 if Debo is gone for sure. So he's in it for me at 14, but like I said, it's more of a gift.
Yeah, guys, I guess I'm the believer in Trey Lance. We talked about it earlier in the show. Jimmy G likely getting traded. My money was on the Houston Texans acquiring him, but I believe in Lance, his physical talent, his ability to know where to put the ball on the field. We did see him start 2 games last year, and I believe in the Shanahan offense. I think he'll find ways to, put Lance in, where his strengths are. Excellent supporting cast. The 49ers got to a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Trey Lance has more playmaker abilities than Jimmy. So I'm ready to watch Trey Lance take the next step and be a dominant playmaker in the NFL. I think get in now while you can, and hopefully he falls to me in drafts so then I can keep him for a couple of years.
All right, moving on to the 14th spot. We have Trevor Lawrence, and let's see, Chris, you are the only one who ranked him. Just as a side note, we ranked our top 15, so he kind of falls here to that ranking. So the floor is yours, Chris. Tell us a little bit about Trevor Lawrence at 13.
Of course. Doug Peterson's head coach. When he was Carson Wentz's head coach, he was playing as an MVP caliber quarterback in those early years. I think Trevor Lawrence can throw for 27 touchdowns, get another 3 in on the ground, so a total of 30 touchdowns. He is going to cut down on those interceptions. He did lead the league in interceptions last year at 17. If he cuts that down to 12 even, it's a huge improvement. They paid Christian Kirk, wide receiver 1 money. He will catch 1,000, have 1,000 yards this year. Evan Ingram, new environment, still young. He's going to have a bounce back year. He does have the weapons to succeed. He does have the easy strength of schedule, playing the bottom, teams in the divisions that match up for this year. I am going to sell high on Trevor Lawrence. If Trevor Lawrence is there, I will roll with him as my starting quarterback for week 1 because I do believe in him.
Yeah, Fantasy Pros has him at 8.8 strength of schedule. Man, that's tough sledding. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how much I can praise Trevor Lawrence. We talked about Zach Wilson in last week's episode. I like the way the Jets coach Robert Saleh deeply invested in the offense around Wilson, more so than I like the Jags offseason moves. But to your point, Chris, he's got Doug Peterson. He's a pass-heavy guy in terms of scheme, and he played the position himself in the league. So we'll see if that leads to a more developed Trevor Lawrence this year. You already touched on throwing the league high 17 interceptions in 2021. He can overcome that finish from last season, but I'm not confident enough for top 15.
Chris, we already know your answer. Matt, would you rather have Matt Ryan or Trevor Lawrence this year?
I have Matt Ryan ranked higher than Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. I probably would too.
Dude, I'd board bet both of you guys right now on that.
That's fair. Let's do it. Yeah.
$20 each?
Yep. Matt Ryan is ranked higher at the end of the year than Trevor Lawrence.
I'm good with that.
Ranked higher or just fantasy points?
Yeah, that would make him ranked higher. Yeah.
All right. Just want to clarify it for all of our listeners out there. D-Chick, I'd even double down and say he has a better year than Trey Lance.
Let me see what the Jimmy G news is in the coming weeks. But I might take you up on that.
I don't feel good about it. You're right. He's got a lot of good pieces around him, man. But I'm willing to take that for sure. Really take that easy money. All right. Remember, this is a top 15 list. Where we at? 15. Who's the guy that's the bottom of our barrel? It's tried and true Kirk Cousins out of Minnesota. Chris, dead nail, 15. Matt, you got the 14th spot. And I'm a little high on him at 12. Matt, you want to take this one as the middleman?
I don't know much more to say about Kirk Cousins. This is like, out of the list that we've gone through, this is like the unsexy name. If you walk away with him at the draft, people are like, whatever, you grab Kirk Cousins. But I think this guy's just steady production. I think he's always had nice output through his career here in the NFL. Vikings might surprise people this year. I think the NFC North will get a little bit more competitive, and Justin Jefferson catches everything in sight. So he's got a good wide receiver 1. Dalvin Cook is going to always show up and get his. So he's got the core around him, and I think Kirk Cousins is a safe quarterback. So if you exit the draft, you punt quarterback a little later in draft, you snag Kirk, I think you can have a nice floor of points.
Do you know who Kirk Cousins like nowadays reminds me of? He reminds me of Matthew Stafford 4 or 5 years ago on the Lions, right? Like, yeah, he plays for a shit team, but he could throw up 30 to 35 fantasy points like that in garbage time. But I do expect the Vikings to be very talented. Like you said, Justin Jefferson catches everything. I would be very high if I didn't have Justin Jefferson as a keeper on Irv Smith Jr., their tight end. I think he can be a breakout star in that tight end slot and really step up as maybe even like the number 2 option in that system and, overturn Adam Thielen. So that's why I have Kirk Cousins. Yeah, not the sexy pick, but he is not going to lose you fantasy football games. He's going to get you the solid maybe 24 points average, hopefully, in a standard point system.
Yeah, great. I think you hit on the nail. The conference that he's in, the division, and the I mean, we were just talking about Jefferson being wide receiver 1 potentially this year. You do that, you've got to be a top 15 quarterback, right? So
he plays the Bears twice. Like he's probably gonna be ranked as top 5 quarterback both those weeks. So
yeah.
Yeah, it's just going to be quiet when you draft him in your draft room. Nobody's going to give you like no pats on the back, like good pick. You're just going to end up with Kirk Cousins, but you'll end up with a good floor of points week to week.
Speaking of drafts, see how many cornerbacks we got? Yeah, that was stop those mother. But that's it for our top 15. Let us know in the comments whether you guys agree, you disagree. You want us to stop making 15 lists? Let us know. You guys have any closing comments or anything?
I'll just chime in and say we started this little YouTube adventure last week, and to our surprise, a few hundred of you tuned in. So we want to just shout out to you, Moose Knucklers. We appreciate you and hope you subscribe and stick around for content as we inch closer to football. So thank you.
Absolutely. And from myself, Matt, and Chris, we thank you for joining us for another week of the Moose Knuckle podcast. Cheers, and we'll see you next week. Peace.
See ya.